Is it coincidence or some kind of fake news? We're talking about correlation. Lesson 4, right now. Now, we can't really talk about this correlation without introducing at least basic concepts in statistics. All right? I mean, you really have to. You can't ignore it. So, statistics is the science used to qualify and quantify facts and data. I mean, you've seen it all over the place. So when you hear statistics and you hear terms like the mean or calculating an average, what are you actually doing? Taking the sum of some values, dividing by the count, giving yourself an average, the mode of some particular data set where you're looking at the piece of data which occurs the most in that particular set. Or you also could be talking about the median, which is the median point in all of your data. Frequency. How often does a particular piece of data occur in relationship to the whole data set? And you could usually represent that using some type of percentage. And then, of course, probability, where is how likely is this particular data going to occur inside of those sets. So all of those are things that they're fundamental in statistics, and they really have a lot to do with how we understand and are framing our world when we're talking about chaos and coincidence, causality, those types of things. We run into troubles in this space, which is why we had to talk about this particular concept here. We run into trouble because it's hard nowadays. To be honest with you, it was actually hard before, but we have created tools which makes it a lot easier for us to convey information a lot faster than what we used to. So you hear things in terms about fake news, alternative facts. I mean, you hear all kinds of things thrown around nowadays because it really has to do with the understanding of the processing and data. And the understanding is really contingent upon how it's presented. All right? That's where it can get kind of iffy. Oh, let's talk about this, where we're actually going to be doing. That's where I'll show an example. Inferential statistics deals with statistics of explaining, qualifying, quantifying data based upon a sample of a population. So if you have your data set, and it could be anything, just a group of names, it could be number of people, it could be a population of a country. I don't care what your data set actually is. Sometimes those data sets can get big. There could be billions of people in this set. You can't necessarily calculate everything or count all of those things. If you are looking at and you need information from 3 billion people, you're not going to get it. It'll spend all lifetime just trying to capture the data for the question before I can actually do any processing or answering after that. So you could create samples of that data. And what do I mean by that? I mean taking a portion of 3 billion. Perhaps 3 billion is too big. Perhaps it would take me 30 years just to poll enough people to get the data that I need to start doing some processing on whatever I'm looking for. Maybe I could work with, I don't know, not 3 billion, 300,000. How about I could shrink that down to maybe 30,000. It might be that sample size is simply too small. I can't capture enough variance. And so what I mean by that, if you're looking at a population of 3 billion people. I mean, humans are different. I mean, we've already talked about this to a degree. So humans are different. We have all kinds of things going on, ethnicities, we have cultures, we have communities of practice, we have all kinds of things. Could I capture the richness of that diversity in 300,000 people, maybe just 30,000 people? I might be leaving a lot on the floor. I might be losing a lot of diversity and difference in a small set than if I were looking at something much larger. So you might say, well, if you need to make a big decision, always use the big piece of data. Well, the big piece of data might take too long for me to make a decision with. You understand? So sometimes that's what you just have to do. You have to do the best that you can. We do that all the time. Everybody talking about our technology nowadays, especially in the world of artificial intelligence, requires massive blocks of data, big things. It's how a lot of our deep neural network systems work. We have to train these things. You just can't write an AI system and it just works. That's preposterous. You have to train it. Humans require training. I get training in my visual sense every single day of my life. I open my eyes, I am training, period. You might think nobody's training you anything. Absolutely are. I mean, I simply learn. I don't need someone to tell me to learn. I can open my eyes and learn. Yeah, that's how we work. So, I mean, we do that with our AIs and a lot of things that people talk about now. What are they doing? They're like some of these AIs they're training and they're like, oh, the AI are racist. They're bigoted. They're doing all kinds of decisions and making crazy things and deciding making improper judgments. You can't trust these things. Racism was built into the core. Let me tell you something. You understand? Garbage in, garbage out. If you limit your data set to looking at only, blue flowers, then any flower you give it is going to be blue. It's going to be a blue flower. You give it minimal data, you can't expect it to do anything else. So it really, I don't care how you've programmed it. I don't care what you've actually done. If what you've done in terms of providing it example for it to look at and learn, if all you've done is taught it one way, then the one way is all it's going to be capable of. These machines they didn't come out racist. They were built to be bigoted. These humans, we had to get rid of them. Roger, dig them. Come on, man, come on. Look at Rachel. Rachel ain't trying to leap out and stab me to death. I'm tired of you talk. Oh my goodness, she just frowned. I just said that and she frowned. And now she looks sad. So it's just crazy. It's crazy. Was that coincidence? I have no idea. To be perfectly honest, it just happened to turn out that way. As soon as I said it, she started frowning. She's still looking sad. Oh well, I'm not going to pay attention to you right now. I don't think Rachel's going to be leaping out, stabbing me anytime soon. Because, well, I take that back. There is Stacy. Stacy is a tactical simulator. Rachel is fairly good at playing this tactical simulator. So who knows how she might end up? I know that Rachel isn't designed for security. There is another entity in my little group of AI that's really designed for security. So these machines, they are not. The machines aren't bigoted. The machines aren't racist. They are what we train them to be. Now, we need to spend a lot more time generating great data. Then they will do great things. That's what we do. I have to do that as an educator. Okay? That's what I do. I have to look in different ways. I have to explain it different ways. If all I ever teach my students is one thing and one thing only, that's all. They're one trick pony. That's all they're ever going to know. So Same thing with the machines. That's why we need to have good data sets, good samples, and it helps if the samples are suitably random, right? I'll talk about that in just a second. So as we move into that, let's talk about a completely fictional town called Willow. All right, to illustrate this, let's go ahead and take a look at our fictional town of Willow to see what we're actually talking about here. I'll bring out my trusty whiteboard and then we'll calculate it up. So we're looking at the town of Willow with a population of, let's say, we're about 3,000 households. All right? That's what we actually have. So if you're actually looking at doing some type of survey, I mean, you might do stuff with the mail, you might try to do stuff by calling, whatever. It's 3,000 households. If you have a small staff, it's going to take a while. We're going to want to sample. So let's bring this down to maybe 600. All right. So it's now much smaller, much more manageable. So we're going to see and try, and we're going to try and see if we can work with 600 as opposed to 3,000. All right. Now, if let's say it's 600, you need to make sure that this is properly random. All right. There could be all kinds of people in our town of Willow. I mean, the last thing you want is to be able to build a sample and you are sampling 600 children. So what are we actually going to be asking about? Let's say we're wanting to know, should businesses immediately close after a football match on Sundays? All right. Should businesses close after football? Maybe the football team lost. They want to burn the place down. They want to break everything up. Businesses are closed. Everything's cool, right? So maybe that's a scenario that we're actually talking about. You could survey some kids and the kids just don't care. They don't care about that kind of stuff. So even though you might randomly pick the kids, the data that you're actually using, the numbers are going to come out skewed. The numbers might verify, but it won't be valid in any kind of way. So what if you pulled what if your sample is stacked with a bunch of people who have strong religious convictions? I mean, there are towns that I've known in my lifetime where they just simply didn't sell alcohol on Sundays. So that might skew your results as well. But let's assume that we did pick, we have a pretty good random sample of our population there. Okay? So regardless, you're still looking at about 20%. And that's what the 600 actually represents. So we did send out a survey, or we did a phone poll or whatnot, and we got people who did respond, right? So you have 600, that's what we had to work with, but only, replies. Even though you have a sample of 600, doesn't mean that everybody's actually going to answer. You only got 150. So you got 150 people who replied, and I guess out of 600, whatever. The rest of you call them up, they know you're a telemarketer. I'm not bothering to answer my phone. I do that all the time. If I don't know your phone number, I'm not picking up. I'll let you go to the machine. It used to be great when Kylie was younger. They would call. I get a telemarketer calling, and I would just hand it to Kylie. She'd be like, "Hello." You're like, "Oh, can we talk to somebody?" "Hello." "Oh, could we talk to the man in the house?" "Hello." Oh, it was great. I'd let her just talk because she felt so important. She was important. She had the phone and she was talking to somebody else. Yeah, it was talking great. And people say, "Oh, they could have been saying anything to your little girl." Well, we did it for a while. Then we stopped. There, that's what they get for calling us during dinner time. You don't call during dinner time. Regardless, so we're moving on, and let's say they did. So the question again was, should businesses immediately close after a football match on Sundays? You have yes and no, right? And then no. What'd you actually get? 100 and let's say 37 people of our replies answered yes. Go ahead and close up. 13. Man, that's a lot, right? 137 out of our replies. I mean, what is that actually? I mean, you're looking at about, in the end, that's only about 23% of our sample, but it is 91% of the replies, right? Yes, 91%. So afterwards, we look at what we actually got. We have 91% of our replies said yes, but the replies were kind of small. That's not going to stop. That's not going to stop some people from twisting things around. So over 90% of our poll results were in favor of closing. That's 90%. 90, over 90. And so obviously we should be closing. Well, now I said something about this before. Remember? In a past election, I talked about crowbars singing opera. Well, that is the crowbar. It's singing. That's what that is. I can't now say that this 91% is even valid because it's only 23%. The reality is less than a quarter of my expected results would say, yeah, we should close. So the answer should be no, not yes. But the way you present your facts, the way you present the findings, that could sway people. Even though I could run the numbers and calculate it out and verify that it does calculate the way you say, but it simply isn't valid because of the context of how you're presenting it. That's what we're actually talking about. And when we're looking at in our modern history, you're talking about fake data, you're talking about fake news or alternative facts. I mean, that in many instances, that's what we're actually looking at. We're looking at the presentation of what our findings are. We might be looking at a poor representation of the population or perhaps even the sample, which gives us skewed results, which we then present to other people. It is in our best interest to take a look at the various things. So when we see results of studies and we see these findings that are going to be put out there for us to consume, it pays to ask the question, what is your sample? What's your sample size? How random was that? Are the data elements within that sample? You might not even know. I mean, you might see some report and they're talking 85%, blah, blah, blah. They might not even tell you what the population or sample was of surveyed results. That doesn't really tell me anything. So I guess I could, that's good. You strung a couple numbers together. But should I be deciding whether or not to jump off this bridge because of that? I'm probably going to say no. I'm just not going to. Not without a better explanation of how you might have calculated those results, right? Yeah, that's what we're actually talking about. Let's go ahead and move on inside our lesson to see what we're actually moving into next. Okay, so we have an activity that we're moving into. Our activity for C, Charlie, and C again. Whatever, just C, or C analysis. We're going to be looking at 3 little scenarios. So the first one has to do, a woman is walking to work. She's verbally harassed by workers at a site. Catcalling is what we're actually talking about. There was a video that I saw, it was on the web, and it was a few years back where we were exploring, really from a societal perspective, the catcalling and what that actually means. I remember we had a big discussion in our seminars over this particular concept. And, you had lots of different sides looking at that. Yeah. I mean, you do need to show people respect. I mean, some people just can't have it. Some people would say, just walk on by. Who cares? Some people say, I like the fact that people are paying attention to me. Other people say it's just crude and rude. Well, perspectives matter. I mean, you should. I mean, there were instances where we were talking about where you're walking down the street and someone finds you attractive and they want to come up and start talking to you. I don't want them talking. I'm just walking. I was walking and I did not ask to be interrupted. I did not ask to be approached or hit upon. I want to continue moving my direction unaccosted by anything else. And that's your right. That's cool. I guess before you were walking, or as you were walking down the street, and before someone came up to I don't know, hit upon you, I guess, would they have known that all you really wanted to do was walk down the street? They might not have. They just might not have. So it would be incumbent upon people in situations to simply inform. Leave me alone. I'm walking. And that should be all you really need. That should be the end of it. There are different perspectives on this. Correlation. Her friend is asking. She wants to start walking also. She wants to avoid walking because you're going to be verbally harassed by men daily. Well, there are there's coincidence, correlation, causality, so on and so forth. Perspectives. Vegetables at a grocery store are always freshest on Friday mornings. I take that because, I've seen it. I've seen that happen. So if you're able to go to the grocery store on a Friday, especially the one I went to, that would be the time to go. The vegetables are good that day. My electric bike consumes more battery power than riding at home in the summertime. Whatever. Understand these three scenarios. I mean, maybe you have knowledge about them, maybe you don't. Maybe you know other people who could speak to some of the context behind the things there. Try and make sure that you keep in mind the perspectives of not just the actors that you might see that we are talking about inside of the scenarios, but maybe the secondary actors that are in there. Other things, other people. Taking all perspectives if you can, and talk about coincidence, correlation, and causality from that perspective. And when you're done, come on back and we shall continue on.